The Alden estate stood like a fortress at the edge of the city, its tall gates and sprawling lawns whispering of a wealth most people could only dream of. Inside, every detail spoke of power: polished marble floors, staircases carved from rare oak, chandeliers glittering with imported crystal. Yet beneath the surface of this grandeur lived a silence so heavy it seemed to smother the air. For all its beauty, the mansion was not a home. It was a cage of sorrow. Mr. Gregory Alden, the man who owned half the skyline, was no stranger to success. His signature could topple companies or build them overnight. His decisions shaped markets, and his presence commanded respect in every boardroom. But behind the reputation, the sharp suits, and the endless victories, lay a wound that no deal, no fortune, no empire could heal. His only child, Isabella, had been declared blind since infancy. From the moment she was placed in his arms, doctors said her eyes would never truly see the world. And though her delicate face carried the grace of an angel, her gaze never seemed to find him. He believed she was trapped in eternal darkness, and with that belief, he too sank into his own. Every corner of the mansion reminded him of what he had lost. He had filled Isabella's world with the finest toys, hired specialists, bought Braille books bound in leather, and surrounded her with caretakers. Yet the house remained cold. For what he longed for most, a shared glance, a smile born of eye contact, was something he thought could never be his. Before we go any further, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if the story moves you, drop your thoughts in the comments and share it with a friend. Now let's begin. He carried guilt with him like a shadow, blaming himself for not being present at her birth, for letting her mother face the fragile first months alone. By the time he tried to return, the diagnosis had already carved its truth into their lives. And so Isabella grew up in a house overflowing with luxury, but starved of warmth. She wandered the halls in gowns chosen by stylists, clutching toys she rarely played with, her small hands trailing along the walls to guide her steps. Servants moved like ghosts, careful not to disturb the fragile balance of the house, and Mr. Alden buried himself deeper in work to avoid the ache of watching his daughter's struggles. Everyone believed the story. Everyone accepted the doctor's verdict. Everyone, that is, except one woman. Her name was Clara. She was young, barely in her mid-20s, with hands roughened by work and a spirit tempered by hardship. She had grown up in poverty, the eldest of 4 siblings, and learned early that survival was built on resilience and sacrifice. When she first stepped into the Alden mansion as a maid, she expected little more than endless cleaning, scrubbing, and the distant weight of serving people far richer than she could ever imagine. But Clara was different from the others. She carried with her a gentleness, a light that wealth could not dim, and it was this light that drew her to Isabella. From the very beginning, Clara refused to treat Isabella as fragile glass. She spoke to her with warmth, laughed with her, told her stories of the world outside the tall gates. She did not pity her blindness. She embraced her as a child deserving of joy. And in that closeness, Clara noticed something no one else dared to see. It began subtly. One morning, as Clara entered Isabella's room with a tray of breakfast, she noticed the little girl's head turned toward her before she made a sound. Another time, while arranging bright flowers in a vase, she felt Isabella's gaze linger, just for a moment, on the burst of color. And once, when Clara dropped a golden hairpin by accident, she swore Isabella's eyes flickered downward, following the glint of metal as it landed on the carpet. At first, Clara said nothing. Who was she, a maid with no medical training, to question the verdict of doctors? But the thought lingered, whispering at the back of her mind. Could it be possible? Could Isabella see, at least a little? Clara's heart told her yes, but her fear kept her silent. To speak such a thought aloud could cost her everything. Yet as days passed, the signs became too clear to ignore. Clara began to test her suspicions, quietly, carefully, as though each moment was a fragile thread she dared not pull too hard. When she brought Isabella her toys, she would place them at different angles on the table. Time and time again, the little girl's small hands reached not randomly, but with uncanny precision, always toward the toy bathed in sunlight. Clara would sweep the curtains open and pretend she needed the brightness for her chores, but really she was watching Isabella's face, searching for the slightest flicker of recognition. And there it was. Those delicate eyes narrowed ever so slightly when the sun poured in. It was in these moments Clara's heart both soared and trembled. If Isabella could see, even in part, then she had been trapped inside a false story her whole life. But what if Clara was wrong? What if she was reading too much into coincidence? A single mistake could mean her dismissal. She could not afford to lose this job, not when her wages were the lifeline for her brothers and sisters back home. And yet, every instinct in her whispered the truth. She carried her secret like a weight, the knowledge pressing down on her with every passing day. She prayed silently for guidance, torn between fear and the urgency of what she knew. And then, one golden afternoon, the choice was made for her. The playroom was drenched in light that spilled through towering windows. Isabella sat in her crimson dress, cradling a stuffed bear in her arms. Clara, her pulse racing, reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small torch she used during her chores. She held it gently, almost reverently, and shone a narrow beam across the room. Not toward Isabella's face at first, but across the floor, sweeping it like a passing star. Isabella's eyes followed. Clara's breath caught, her hands trembling. Slowly, with a mix of fear and hope, she lifted the beam toward Isabella's face. And then it happened. The flicker, a narrowing of pupils. A tiny gasp from the little girl as her hands stretched out, her lips parting to whisper, "It's so bright." Clara's chest tightened. Tears welled in her eyes as the truth stood before her. Undeniable. Isabella wasn't blind. Not entirely. She had sight, fragile and faint, but sight nonetheless. And that was when Clara heard it, the sound that made her blood run cold. Footsteps echoing across the marble hallway. She froze, the torch still in her hand. The doorway filled with a tall, commanding figure. Mr. Alden. His sharp suit gleamed in the afternoon light, but his eyes looked weary, shadowed by years of guilt. He stopped dead in his tracks, his gaze locked on the scene before him, his maid with a torch in hand, and his daughter staring directly at the beam. The silence was suffocating. Clara's heart pounded, her mind racing with fear. Had she ruined everything? Would he fire her on the spot for daring to interfere in matters far above her station? But then Mr. Alden's eyes shifted to Isabella, and what he saw shattered the foundation of his beliefs. His daughter's gaze was alive, following the light. Her small hand reached outward, fingers trembling with wonder. "Papa," she whispered, "it's so bright." The words struck him like a thunderclap. His knees buckled, and he staggered back against the doorframe. For years he had lived with the weight of her blindness, the grief of believing she would never see his face. And now in a single moment that belief cracked. His heart thundered. Could it be? Could his daughter truly see? Clara's courage surged in the silence. She stepped forward, voice unsteady yet determined. "Sir," she said softly, "I've seen the signs for weeks. The way her eyes follow movement, the way she notices light. I tested her quietly, afraid to speak, but I am certain. Isabella can see, perhaps not perfectly, but enough." Mr. Alden's face hardened in confusion, disbelief, and raw hope all at once. He shook his head, torn between the authority of doctors and the undeniable evidence before him. "No," he muttered, as though clinging to the only truth he had ever known. "They told me. They all told me." His voice cracked, the power of his empire dissolving in the face of one fragile revelation. Clara did not waver. She spoke with the steady conviction of a woman who had nothing but truth to give. "Sometimes, sir, it is not wealth or titles that see clearly. It is love, and I love her enough to notice what others could not." For a long, painful moment, the only sound was Isabella's gentle giggle as she reached for the light. Then Mr. Alden's composure broke. He knelt before his daughter, his trembling hands cupping her face as tears blurred his vision. And for the first time in his life, Gregory Alden felt powerless. Not before a rival, not before a failing investment, but before the possibility that his little girl's world was not darkness after all. The air in the mansion shifted that day. The silence that had haunted its halls was broken, replaced by questions too heavy to ignore. The truth had clawed its way to the surface, and nothing, not wealth, not doctors, not even Mr. Alden's pride, could bury it again. And so a decision was made. New specialists would be called, not the same ones who had dismissed Isabella's chances before, but fresh eyes opened to possibility. Tests would be done. Hope would be given its chance. But even before the doctors arrived in that sunlit playroom, a truth already lived, carried by the smile of a little girl who saw light and the courage of a maid who dared to believe. The mansion stirred with a new kind of energy in the days that followed. For the first time in years, its halls hummed not with silence, but with anticipation. Mr. Alden, shaken to his core, yet unwilling to ignore what he had seen, summoned new specialists, experts who had no connection to the physicians of the past. Men and women who looked not at his wealth, but at Isabella with fresh eyes and open minds. The examinations were long and exhausting. Lights flashed, patterns moved across boards, objects were placed at various distances. Isabella, nervous at first, clung to Clara's hand with quiet determination. Each time the doctors asked her to respond, Clara knelt at her side, whispering encouragement that made the child's face glow with courage. And slowly, the truth revealed itself piece by piece. Isabella suffered not from complete blindness, but from a rare visual condition that limited her range and clarity. Her world was blurred, yes, but far from dark. With therapy, patience, and the right treatments, her vision could be nurtured, grown stronger. The results left Mr. Alden speechless. He sat in the corner of the consultation room, his hands pressed against his temples as the verdict unfolded. All the years of sorrow, all the distance he had placed between himself and his daughter, all the guilt he had drowned in, built on a foundation that was not truth, but assumption. His chest heaved with the weight of it. That night when the house fell quiet, Mr. Alden locked himself in his study. Papers lay scattered on his desk, contracts worth millions, deals that demanded his signature. Yet none of it mattered as his tears fell unchecked, staining the pages. He wept not as a businessman, but as a father, grieving the years he could never reclaim. Years where he had failed to believe in what was right before his eyes. But grief soon gave way to resolve. He would not lose another day to blindness, not hers, not his own. From that moment, Mr. Alden's life shifted. He made space in his calendar where none had existed before. Board meetings were postponed, phone calls ignored, entire deals rescheduled, because therapy appointments with Isabella came first. He sat beside her through every session, watching as she slowly learned to trace shapes, to name colors, to follow light with growing precision. Her tiny voice filled the sterile rooms with laughter when she pointed at something she recognized. "Papa, your tie is blue!" Or "Look, the teddy is green!" And each time Mr. Alden's heart cracked wider, spilling with joy he thought he had lost forever. Clara was never far. She remained Isabella's anchor, her calm presence a constant reassurance. When the exercises frustrated the little girl, when tears welled in her eyes and her small fists clenched in despair, Clara was there, kneeling, soothing, reminding her that every flicker of light was a victory. To Isabella, Clara was not just a maid. She was the sister she never had, the friend she could lean on, the one who believed in her before anyone else dared to. Mr. Alden noticed it too. He began to see Clara not as a servant in pressed uniforms, but as the quiet force who had saved his daughter's life. More than once he tried to offer her rewards, a promotion, jewels, even a small fortune. But Clara always shook her head, her eyes steady with humility. "Sir, I do not want riches. I only want Isabella to know she is loved. That is enough for me." Her words pierced him deeper than any financial lesson he had ever learned. For all his billions, he realized he had been poor in the one currency that mattered most: presence, love, trust. Clara, with nothing but her heart, had given his daughter what his empire could not. As weeks melted into months, the mansion itself transformed. No longer was it a museum of silence, but a home alive with sound. Laughter echoed in the playroom. Splashes of color brightened canvases as Isabella painted messy rainbows. Music drifted from the piano as she learned to press the keys. Mr. Alden found himself kneeling on rugs, building block towers with his daughter, or running in the gardens, catching her delighted shrieks as she pointed at butterflies fluttering in the air. And in those moments, the mighty businessman was no longer the master of skyscrapers. He was simply a father, learning to love again, rediscovering joy through the eyes of the child he once thought lost to darkness. Word of Isabella's progress spread quietly beyond the estate. Neighbors spoke of it in hushed tones, marveling at the story of the billionaire's daughter who was said to be blind, but now could see. In cafes, in marketplaces, whispers carried, not of deals or empires, but of the maid whose faith revealed the truth. The tale became a quiet legend, a reminder that miracles often come not from wealth or status, but from compassion and courage. But in the heart of it all, the story was not about rumors. It was about a father rediscovering his daughter, a child rediscovering the world, and a maid proving that even in the grandest halls, kindness could outshine gold. The journey was not over. There were still challenges, still setbacks when Isabella's eyes grew tired, still nights when fear crept back into Mr. Alden's heart. But there was also progress, tangible, undeniable progress. Each new day brought fresh light, and with it, hope that grew stronger than any empire ever could. Seasons turned, and with them, the Alden mansion bloomed into something it had not been in years, a home. The cold marble halls, once echoing with emptiness, now carried the sound of Isabella's laughter, the gentle rhythm of music, and the warmth of voices sharing meals instead of silence. The gardens, once trimmed to sterile perfection, became her playground. She ran across the grass barefoot, pointing out the colors she was learning to name: the gold of the sunflowers, the scarlet of roses, the emerald leaves trembling in the wind. Each discovery was a miracle to her, but to her father, it was more than that. It was redemption. Gregory Alden no longer defined himself by skyscrapers or contracts. He found his worth in evenings spent on the floor with building blocks, in afternoons painting rainbows with his daughter's small hands guiding his, in mornings when she ran into his arms shouting, "Papa, I see you." The fortress of his heart, long walled with guilt, crumbled brick by brick until only love remained. And through it all, Clara stood beside them. She never sought the spotlight, never boasted of what she had uncovered. She remained steady, humble, her eyes always fixed on Isabella's progress, rather than her own recognition. Yet to Mr. Alden, she was no longer just a maid. She was the reason his daughter had a future filled with light. He found himself often at a loss for words when he looked at her, silently grappling with the truth that in all his power, he had failed to see what she had noticed with nothing but her heart. Neighbors, friends, even distant strangers spoke of the story as though it were a parable. They repeated it in coffee shops, in churches, in schools, how a billionaire's daughter, believed blind, was shown the truth by a servant girl. The tale spread not as gossip, but as hope, a reminder that wealth cannot buy sight, but love can reveal it. But within the estate, away from the murmurs of the city, life was quieter, simpler. Isabella grew stronger each day, her eyes adjusting, her confidence blooming. She painted pictures of the garden, asked endless questions about the stars, and giggled each time she caught her father trying to teach her chess, but losing on purpose. She leaned on Clara for comfort, clung to her hand during hard days, and whispered secrets to her at night. To Isabella, Clara was not just a maid. She was her sister, her friend, her guardian angel. For Mr. Alden, every glance from his daughter was a gift, every smile a treasure more valuable than all the riches in his vaults. And he knew, with certainty, that none of it would have been possible without Clara's courage. He often wondered how different life would be if she had stayed silent, if she had chosen fear over truth. But she had not. She had risked everything for a child that was not her own. That, he realized, was the purest form of love. Time softened the sharp edges of guilt that had once defined him. In their place grew gratitude. Gratitude for second chances, for a daughter who could finally see the world, and for the young woman who had given them both a future. The mansion was no longer a monument of wealth. It had become something richer, a place where laughter lived, where light poured through open windows, where a father learned to love again, and where kindness became the foundation of every day. Clara never asked for recognition, but she received it in the most profound way possible. Each time Isabella looked at her and smiled, each time Mr. Alden's voice softened when he thanked her, she knew she had done something greater than change a story. She had changed lives, and that was reward enough. If you believe stories like this should be told, hit that subscribe button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below because your voice matters too.